Go on, let me see what's inside. Vincent looked at his faithful sprite, telepathically ordering it to go further through the tunnel in front of them. The tiny servant nodded with excitement and instantly became invisible. Go in slower this time. They can hear you buzzing around, you know, he continued. Everybody else's eyes and ears were focused on him, waiting to hear what lies ahead. Not a minute later, he began talking, quietly. Well, I only see Krumrig and Thogrom inside, getting closer. Hopefully, they don't hear the buzzing this time. They are talking, but I can't understand. It sounds like Dwarvish, but mixed with Undercommon or something else. They are nervous though. The chamber is spacious, a few torches lit nearby. Lots of columns, total darkness everywhere else. Metallic noises, probably from those invisible freaks, hiding somewhere close. As he pulled back into himself, his eyes shifted, looking quizzically at his buddies' faces. Go dark? They nodded approvingly. I'll handle Krumrig this time. Take care of Thogdog and his ass-lickers, Vincent said as he springed up, invoked the globe of blinding darkness, and started running. His heavy plate armor announced their assault. Morin, Galvin, Masato, and Iphigenia followed his loud footsteps. The moment they entered the chamber, Krumrig unleashed burning fires towards them, joined by more than a dozen javelins popping seemingly out of nowhere. You have no chance, usurpers. Bow down to me. Vincent managed to slip out of harm's way in the last moment, but the rest of the party got a bit burned and impaled. 20 elite Duergar guards appeared around them, each growing at a rapid rate together with Thogrom. A violent battle to the death ensued. The Duergar, led by Thogrom, had the size and numbers advantage, but they were matched by Hero's immense, overwhelming power. A few guards in front got ripped apart right away. However, Krumrig, part machine, part Duergar, was smashing and stomping the heroes with unnatural speed and brutish force. Vincent saw the opening and started firing his hand crossbow with equally furious speed and ungodly precision. Krumrig felt the painful barrage coming from the left side. Shifting his attention entirely towards the big blob of darkness, flinging out bolts his way, he started spewing out scorching, flaming jets, but to no avail. The dark ball was already out of his reach. Time slowed down for him. He turned around. Thogrom was fighting for his life. His elite Duergar guards were dropping down like cattle in the slaughterhouse. Complete and utter defeat. In a final act of desperation, Krumrig charged back into the fray. But before he could even reach for any of the heroes, Vincent showered him with his last slew of ammo. All 4 bolts pierced deep inside Krumrig's back. The last one punctured right through his dark heart, killing him at the spot. And thus, just as quickly and violently as he rose to power, Krumrig and his tyrannical rule came to an end. Alright everybody, MinMax Munchkin back with another video tonight, to this evening, this day, whatever time of the day it is at your place. I'm going to talk about a build that you probably heard about before, but I felt compelled to make a video about it just because I think the way I built it is somewhat a bit more, let's call it, special than some other generic builds out there. So the title of the video, the build name is actually Hexbow. That means you combine Hexblade with a fighter, with an archer fighter, and the build actually up until level 20 is very competitive, but unfortunately it kind of peaks around tier 3, so from level like 13, 14 to like level 17, that's when this build is like at its most strength. It will work equally well in lower tiers, and it will sort of work well even in tier 1, but in tier 2 and especially in tier 3, it's when it's at its best. So some key features and spells of this build: obviously Hex Warrior and Hexblade's Curse. We've already talked about some other Hexblade builds on this channel, so if you've watched any of my previous videos, you probably know what these two mean. This is a feat heavy build, because the fighter's chassis actually enables you to have a lot of ability score increases, which in a campaign where a DM lets you take feats and multiclass your character can work pretty well, and because of that reason this build is going to have a lot of feats. So Crossbow Expert, Sharpshooter, these are the two staple ones. Nothing specific about these two, they just mesh very well together. Action Surge from Fighter, we are going to invest heavily into a fighter here, so by the time you hit level 20 you will have 2 action surges per short rest. Combat superiority with the maneuvers and superiority dice from Battlemaster Fighter. Extra attack, 3 attacks per round with the 11 levels of fighter. Darkness spell and Devil's Sight invocation combo, again another fairly known tactic used by warlocks out there. And finally Elven accuracy feat, which will solidify our ability to hit stuff at range. Now, defining characteristics, it's due to Crossbow Expert feat. It's equally viable at range and in melee, almost identical. It's single ability dependent, because you are a Hexblade and you can just use your charisma to wield the weapons which you are proficient. It's got a superb tier 2 damage output once you hit that extra attack, and combined with Crossbow Expert and Sharpshooter you will be able to dish out a lot of damage. Peaks in tier 3, as we already said. A very high burst Nova capability in a single round. It's capable of unleashing somewhere around 150 to 200 damage, depending on your rolls, crits and whatnot. It's got a flexible and balanced action economy. It's somewhat dense in the bonus action department, somewhat sparse in the reaction department, but still you have a lot of action economy with this build. It's got a very consistent damage per round. You will be able to dish out 2-3 bolts every round, if from early levels up until high levels. So some of those bolts are bound to hit. It's sort of like an off-tank. It's a damage sponge. It's got a lot of HP, and due to that fact you can tank a lot of damage. You can take a lot of damage. Some scouting capabilities, and it's got a deep, sort of like a very rich selection of role-playing possibilities, options. So due to the fact that you are making a pact with a higher being here and becoming a Hexblade, you're not just a typical warrior, you are a bit more than that. So we are starting off with the half-elf variant, a drow variant. Why drow? Because drows get their drow magic, and if you don't know, drows, the dark elves, can at level 5 cast whatever darkness spell once per day, and this build is very dependent on the darkness to work. So it's kind of like a one trick, two trick pony. So getting that additional darkness every day, a third one, is always a good thing. And of course, Fairy Fire is always good to have. Dancing Light cantrips as well. Charisma is your spellcasting ability, so it synergizes very well, because your Hexblade is all going to max your... You need to max your charisma for Hexblade's Hex Warrior anyway. It's got a dark vision, obviously, all of the half-elf thingies. We put +1 to strength and constitution. Why strength? Because I think due to the fact that you are a fighter, you should invest into a heavy armor. Because this build, even though it's kind of like, it relies on darkness, but that darkness is not invisible, obviously. It's like a huge blob of darkness that nothing can see through. Nothing other than devils and, I don't know, some other things. And obviously you with the Devil's Society invocation. So, yeah, I think you should have at least 15 strength, but I like my numbers rounded, so 16. So yeah, either 15 or 16. I would personally put it like this. Start off with 17 in charisma. We are going to have 1 feat elven accuracy, which is going to increase our charisma up until 18. So that's why we leave it like this. Obviously, that's about it. All the half-elf thingies, except for skill versatility, we exchanges for these 3, for the cantrip and these 2 spells. Now, background, again, you can choose any background, but in my opinion, mercenary veteran makes the most sense, because you're sort of like a guy who went through a lot in his life or her life. It can be a woman anyway. And you kind of like, you are fed up with just your physical capabilities, you want some more power, and that's what the Hexblade patron, the Hexblade Warlock, provides. So you get athletics and persuasion, 1 type of gaming set, land vehicles, obviously. You get the mercenary life feature. There are some examples here of the mercenary companies. These are obviously not all. There are like dozens, probably like couple of dozens in Faerun, in Forgotten Realms. It's too deep to go into each of those, so just pick your poison. Now, feats. Obviously, Crossbow Expert is the first one, because this feat is going to enable us to ignore the loading quality of crossbows. This means that with Fighter's extra attack, you are not limited to only 1 hit per round, because the loading quality says that you cannot use your crossbow more than once per turn. With this feat, you can use crossbows more than once. You can shoot your crossbow more than once. Also, being within 5 feet of the hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage, so you will pretty much never have disadvantage, even in melee range or in range, obviously, long range. When you use attack action and attack with the one-handed weapon, and crossbow is a one-handed weapon, you can use a bonus action to attack with the hand crossbow you are holding. So this basically means that, for example, if you are a 5th level fighter, you can attack twice with your crossbow with your attack action, and then on top of that use your bonus action to attack additional 3rd time in that same round. So basically at level 5 of your fighter, you are attacking 3 times per round. Combine that with sharpshooter, plus 10 damage. You are a machine that deals a lot of damage even in tier 2. Obviously the sharpshooter provides you with additional range. Now crossbows have 30 short range and 120 long range. So once you get sharpshooter feat, you will be able to fling bolts out of like 100 feet to 120. So considerable distance, far enough to enable you to be comfortably out of harm's way, especially if dealing with melee enemies. So ignore cover, and obviously -5 to hit and +10 to damage. Elven accuracy. Now elven accuracy is one of those feats that a lot of people are very excited about. It is good, don't get me wrong. You get the ability to roll a third die. So if you have advantage, and with Darkness and Devil's Sight Invocation combo, you pretty much almost always have this. You almost always have advantage. If you miss, you can roll a third dice. So basically, re-roll one of the dice. So not only do you increase your charisma to 18, you also get to re-roll a dice if you miss, for example, if you know you're going to miss. So it's always good. Now, unfortunately, there's like, it's like a diminishing returns kind of thing. If you go over here, there's like this, I kind of like, this is like a blog here, some dude, I don't even know the name, deals with these number crunching thingies, and in this table here you can see that, for example, with advantage you have 9.75% chance of making a critical hit. With Elven Accuracy, that chance only rises up to 14.26. Now, for example, with Hexblade's Curse, which enables you to crit on both 19 and 20, with advantage it becomes 19%, with Elven Accuracy it becomes 27%, 27.1. Now, this build actually doesn't deal a lot of critical damage. You pretty much hit with just your crossbow and your sharpshooter. But what Elven Accuracy enables you is pretty much almost have a guaranteed 5+ roll. Now, the chances, the odds of rolling below 5 on the attack die, on the attack roll, are pretty much like 0.8%. So yeah, I mean, even like 10%, even like rolling 10 means that you are going to roll 10 almost 91% of chance, percent of time. And that's actually a huge improvement, because you are actually not fishing for critical hits here, even though with 3 dice rolls you are bound to hit some crits more often, just because of the nature of the dice. But you are actually looking into making those 10 or more d20 rolls, which with this feat you are pretty much able to do 9 out of 10 times. So Lucky Feat as well enables us to reroll even more dice, because at that point we are becoming very annoying, and you basically have 3 luck points. Whenever you make an attack roll, blah blah blah, you can spend one of those luck points to roll additional d20. So basically, if you want to hit something and with Elven Accuracy you somehow miss it, you can use Lucky to roll basically a 4th die in a single like turn, in a single attack roll, and pretty much almost guarantee a hit. Now obviously this table here doesn't deal with even the Lucky Feat here, but you can pretty much assume that with the jump like 11%, and from here is like a lot, from like 55 to 79, so it's like 25%, and this is like 11. It's going to be like 5 or maybe even more, 4 to 5 more percent of like landing that 10 on the d20. That's pretty much what most of the time, that's the only thing you need. And finally, last but not least, we have the Tough Feat, which will basically double our hit points as we level up. Now this feat is, I would actually take this feat last, that's why it's last on the list. It's sort of like a priority list right here, but you can take this like sooner if your party doesn't have a tank, or if you find yourself in situations where your damage, your health point pool gets dangerously low very often. Now onto the Battlemaster. Now Battlemaster Fighter, as we all know, there's like a lot of options here. You get these well, that's an Arcane Archer, sorry. Battlemaster, you learn 3 of these maneuvers. You get 4 superiority dice. As you level up, you gain more dice, they become better, and you learn more maneuvers. Now obviously we are going to start with a fighter for nothing else but concentration saving throws. Everything else is also good, these basic stats, but we are primarily interested in concentration saving throws because we want to be we want to have like a more guarantee of maintaining concentration on that darkness spell. Remember, you only have 2 spell slots, and you only have like 1 additional darkness on top of those 2 darknesses you can cast with those 2 spell slots. So basically you have like 3 darknesses per day. Well, with short rest you have more, obviously. If you short rest you have 2 additionals. But yeah, you still want to be able to maintain concentration, and that's why Fighter is also good. And obviously all armor, weapons, proficiencies, perception, skill, which is always good to have. I would also take intimidation. It just fits the theme in my mind, but you can take anything else that you want. Now, archery fighting style, obviously, we are flinging bolts from the distance here, and basically any ranged weapon has a +2 bonus to attack rolls. And archery fighting style makes the sharpshooter feat from a -5 to hit to a basically -3. So right off the bat at level 1 we are minimizing our odds of missing our targets. Now second wind, obviously at level 1 you get your like a minor healing capability, which increases as you level up. Action surge, the most important part of this build, the one that's going to enable you, if you opt to use it, to kill stuff very quickly. And as we all know, killing stuff quicker than it can kill you is pretty much the best way to, well, kill stuff. Student of War, this is a Battlemaster feature. Basically, you get these maneuvers, you get these superiorities and stuff like that. Student of War basically gives you proficiency with 1 type of artisan tools of your choice. This can be anything. I didn't pick any particular artisan's tools here. You can do whatever you want. Fit the theme however you want. Brewers, alchemists, whatever. Now, maneuvers and improve the combat superiority, which you get at level 10. Basically with these dice, with these 4 dice, which you start with, and then as you level up you get at 7th level another one, 15th level another one. Also at level 10 the D8 dice becomes a D10, and in a combination of these and these maneuvers you become a machine that basically almost never misses. The combination of all the factors. Now remember how we talked about the synergy between Elven Accuracy, Lucky, Darkness and Devil's Sight Invocation. Now, on top of that, with Battlemaster, we have this amazing maneuver called Precision Attack, which basically enables you that when you make a weapon attack roll against a creature, you can spend one of those 4 to 6 superiority dice that you have and add it to the attack roll. Now, you can use this maneuver before or after making the attack roll. Pretty much the only thing that makes sense is to use it after making the attack roll, but before any of the attack effects are applied. So basically, once you roll the attack roll, before the DM tells you if it's a hit or a miss, you get to decide whether to spend one of those superiority dice and basically turn a guaranteed miss into a guaranteed hit. Now, others are pushing attack, obviously. You get to push things from yourself or from your allies, or probably if you are fighting on some, I don't know, a boulder or probably like a ship or something, you can push stuff into the sea or to fall down a great distance. Distracting Strike is good because you get to roll additional damage. All of these effects other than Precision Attack and Parry give you an additional damage based on the number you roll on the superiority dice. Now, Pushing Attack and Distracting Strike deal additional damage, but with Distracting Strike you give one of your allies advantage on the attack roll. And for example, if you have a rogue in party, you can give that rogue advantage. That means that rogue now has a sneak attack. So you are basically indirectly dealing more damage to the enemy you are hitting. Now, Disarming Strike, Menacing, and Goading are basically your go-to maneuvers to either deal with, for example, spellcasters who use arcane focuses, druidic focuses, whatever, or is it called foci? Well, focuses, doesn't matter. English is weird. So yeah, I mean, a Disarming Strike primarily for mages and wizards and sorcerers and other magic spell flinging thingies, and Menacing or Goading attack for giving your enemies disadvantage against your allies. Now, Menacing actually, if you read the maneuver, might not actually work with the darkness because it relies on the frightened condition. Now, frightened condition assumes that the target has a line of sight on you. Well, with darkness, the target doesn't actually see you, so I haven't actually delved deep into this, but I would bet my something that Menacing attack actually doesn't work while you are in darkness. But fret not, you have Goading attack, which pretty much does almost the same kind of thing. The opponent, you kind of like taunt the opponent, you aggro the opponent towards shifting his, her, or its attention towards you. And due to the fact that you are inside of the darkness and the opponent pretty much almost in all cases cannot see you, that opponent has disadvantage on you automatically, and if the opponent fails a saving throw, it has disadvantage on all attack rolls against all the other targets other than you until the end of your next turn. So pretty much if you are fighting with the opponent who is basically mauling one of your allies, you can give that opponent a disadvantage. Now, back to the maneuver. Strip attack, obviously, sometimes you will want to make the creature prone. Now, this actually, be careful with this one, because once the creature is prone, all ranged attack rolls have disadvantage. So use this sparingly, and only if, for example, this is very good if your party has a lot of like burst damage type of melee heroes, because melee type of characters that deal melee damage, melee, it's not melee, it's melee, yeah, melee type of damage, they are going to have advantage, higher percentage of chance to hit the target. So take this one, it's good, but use it sparingly, use it with caution. Now, parry, it's one of those rare ones that don't actually increase your damage, but actually enable you to increase your armor class. So you can use your reaction, roll the dice, and well, not armor class, sorry, my bad, but reduce the damage by the number you roll on the superiority dice. Now, this is like, as you level up, this will be less and less useful, but sometimes you will be on 10 HP, and every little amount of damage that you can avoid taking is going to matter. Maneuvering attack combined with pushing attack is actually very good. Now, you can make the case that maneuvering attack is maybe better than pushing attack, but I think pushing attack has more, let's call it, versatility. Maneuvering attack is, well, it depends on the creature, depends on your ally's movement speed, on the enemy's movement speed. But basically you can do additional damage and move your ally out of harm's way. I don't know, by the time you get all of these maneuvers, this is pretty much all you are left with, because all other maneuvers are relying on melee weapon attack rolls, a lot of them, and you cannot actually use them because you are flinging a ranged weapon. Finally, last but not least, evasive footwork or rally. I think by the time you hit like 15th level, the choice of the last two are actually not that important, but if you have a party with a lot of damage dealers or a lot of, I don't know, spellcasters, rally can be good. Or, for example, if you have a party with with like again a lot of them. You are one of the main frontliners, even though you are wielding a ranged weapon. A footwork, evasive footwork can be very good because it increases your armor class. So that's about it. Now superiority dice, as you level up you start with 4d8. As you level up you get 5d8. At one point you get d10, and finally you get the 6th die at level 15. Now 6 ability score increases. This is the huge thing of this build. Obviously, as you are primarily a fighter, you are 17th level of fighter, you get to have a lot of ability score increase. That's why you can actually afford to just go willy-nilly with feats. Take all the feats that you can and just be a feat master. Basically level 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16. So that's 6 ability score increases, plenty of resources to take all the feats that you need. Extra attack, you are going to hit level 11 at some point, and due to that fact, you are going to have 3 attacks, just 3 attacks with your attack action. Also, don't forget, you get the 4th attack with Crossbow Expert, which you can use as a bonus action. Now, know your enemy can actually be very good, but it's sort of situational. So you oftentimes don't have 1 minute to spend observing your enemies or whatever you want to kill or engage in a fight with. So yeah, it's kind of good to have. You are a battle master, you are kind of like a character who is able to figure out the strong and weak points of his enemies. Indomitable is one of those very good fighter features, just like a basic fighting feature, which you get at level 9, and as you level up you get more and more. So 9, 13 and 17, so pretty much you are going to hit all 3 points of this feature. Basically just enables you to reroll one of the failed saving throws, and it's a long rest feature, which by the time you hit level 17 you can use 3 times per day. Now, final level 15 feature of the Battlemaster is Relentless. That's the one you are going to like peak with. It's good, but due to the fact that you get it at level 18 of your character, because you are going to you are going to want to multiclass into Hexblade as soon as possible. It's kind of not that good. It's still good, but having 1 superiority die instead of 0 at level 18 is not going to matter much. But still, give me all the dice you can. So with that said, that's about it for a fighter. Now let's switch back to Warlock, switch into the Warlock a little bit. At level 1 with Hexblade you get the famous Hex Warrior, which enables you to wield weapons with your charisma instead of dexterity or strength. Now these proficiencies are pretty much redundant, you already have them, but this is the part that we are most interested in. Hexblade's Curse, obviously it's another good level 1 feature. Hexblade, all Warlocks are front loaded, but Hexblade is particularly front loaded with these 2 Hex features. Basically it heals you, it deals additional damage, it crits on 19 and 20, and you can use it once per short rest. So it becomes very good early on as you multiclass into a Warlock. As you level up it sort of becomes less and less useful. Still, it's always good to be able to heal a little bit, deal a little bit more damage, and have almost double the chance, well, not almost, but pretty much double the chance of landing the critical hit. Now, Pact Magic, obviously you have Warlock's spells, so that's basically just a standard feature of the Warlock. Eldritch Invocations is the 2nd level feature, which pretty much this is the most important choice that you can make as a Hexblade, because one that you really cannot live without is Devil's Sight Invocation. which is like a dark vision on steroids, because it enables you to see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical. So it makes the darkness spell, which which basically generates magical darkness, which inside of which nobody can see even with the dark vision. With this feature, with this invocation, you can. Now devils, obviously they have this feature as well. It's one of their staple features. They are like stock features. So for example, devils will be able to see through your darkness, but not all campaigns deal with devils anyway. A lot of campaigns deal with other things. So yeah, I mean, it's situational. Again, it's like one trick pony. Sometimes it's not going to be useful. Most of the times it's going to be very, very useful. Now, I would personally pick Voice of the Chain Master as your second invocation, because I would pick Pact of the Chain. Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm a Hexblade, the most like logical choice of a Pact boon is Pact of the Blade, but in my opinion you don't really need it, because you're not going to engage in melee, and you are not actually going to be able to... I mean, yeah, you can make any kind of weapon with it, but this is like so specific type of build revolving around a single specific type of weapon that Pact of the Blade is basically moot to you. And yeah, I mean, well, I guess if you lose your hand crossbow, I guess you can kind of make, but you cannot even make the hand crossbow with the Pact of the Blade. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of useless to you. Pact of the Tome is good, just like a generic good boon, but Pact of the Chain is actually what I think is the most useful thing to you. Now, because not only do you learn one additional spell, obviously, Find Familiar, you get that better type of familiar, imp, pseudo dragon, quasit or sprite, and you can give your quasit or sprite one of your attacks. When you take the attack action, you can forgo one of your own attacks to allow your familiar to make one attack on its own. Now, this is going to enable you to have like a more flexible type of damage output. For example, you can just put your, especially on lower levels, when not a lot of monsters have a lot of hit points. And you can put your familiar somewhere a bit farther away from yourself, and out of your 2, 3, 4 attacks per round, you can give one of those attacks to your familiar, and that's going to enable you to have, like, in situations where you have to deal with two opponents that are far away from each other, you can, because with the Pact of the Chain combined with Voice of the Chain Master, which basically enables you to communicate telepathically not only 100 feet away from your familiar, but all the, like, on the other end of the planet, as long as you two are on the same plane of existence. You can also see and perceive, basically use your familiar senses, and you can speak through it. Obviously use all the other use all the other features of the Find Familiar spell, cast spells through it, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's about it for Warlock. Now let's see what particular spells you really want with your 3 levels of Hexblade. Now cantrips, yeah, I mean, all Warlocks are known for Eldritch Blast. You can take Eldritch Blast, but I think personally that due to the fact that you will never, first of all, you will never have Agonizing Blast as an invocation, so you will not be able to add your Charisma modifier to the damage rolls. I think Eldritch Blast doesn't make sense for this build, even though it's like force damage, one of the least resisted damage types in the game. I would personally take Utility and non-combat cantrips. Minor Illusion or Prestidigitation both work in their own way. And I would take Friends, because you are, after all, a mercenary veteran, And it's sometimes for mercenaries good to have friends, right? So having more friends is always good, right? If you don't know what the cantrip does, if you've never watched Critical Role and those Taliesin's character, yeah, he used it a lot. Basically, you just have advantage on charisma checks, and we already have proficiencies in persuasion and intimidation. So yeah, I mean, having advantage on those rolls is always a good thing to have. And yeah, I mean, it can become hostile, but if you use intimidation, you don't care. So yeah, that's about it. So back to the list, friends. Now level 1, of all the spells that you can choose Armor of Agathis, it's good. You can choose Hellish Rebuke, which is like a reaction, like a decent range type of damage, fire damage. I think personally Expeditious Retreat is the best spell for you. First of all, it's a bonus action. It's going to interfere a bit with your damage dealing, but you always have your extra attack and you can hit stuff 2 or 3 times per round. Now this is going to enable you to get into the combat quicker or get out of the combat quicker. You can, for example, multiclass into a rogue for 2 levels and then get that cunning action. But this spell basically enables you, when you need that bonus action, dash action, you can have it up to 10 minutes. And yeah, I think this is the spell to take. That's just my opinion. Again, another one, Hex, I mean, that's the best spell to take as a low level warlock because it increases your damage output. And for example, it's very often used as a way to grapple targets, because you can give disadvantage on strength checks, for example, and once the target is disadvantaged on strength checks, whoever tries to grapple it has better odds. Now level 2, obviously, as we already covered it previously, Darkness, it's the spell to take. Obviously it lasts up to 10 minutes, it is a concentration, you need an action, but we combined with your familiar, which you can use in conjunction with Voice of the Chainmaster. You can use it as your scouting feature, scouting servant, your scout, basically your personal scout. You pretty much know beforehand what you are getting into, and with great deal of certainty you can cast this spell before the combat begins. So oftentimes on the first turn it's very bad to use your action to cast a spell that doesn't deal damage. Combined with Voice of the Chainmaster and Find Familiar, which can be invisible, obviously imps and sprites are invisible. You can use that just to get like enough information to be able to figure out when to cast Darkness before combat. It lasts up to 10 minutes, so you have enough time to get into and out of the combat. This provides, as we already covered, like almost a permanent advantage in all situations, and permanent advantage stacked with Elven Accuracy feat basically enables you to roll 3d20 on all attack rolls, which is just sick. The other spell I would take, I mean, you can take Shatter, but you will only be able to use it as like lowest level damage spell. Misty Step doesn't make any sense, you already have Expeditious Retreat. Invisibility or Hold Person could be good, but you are not really a debuff kind of character, and you're not even like a sneaky character. You are wearing heavy armor. So in my opinion, Suggestion is like the best spell to take. It's like one of the best second level spells in general, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can turn a very hostile creature into basically harmless standbyer, or passerby. So yeah, that's about it. And now progression wise, I think regardless of the level you start with, or regardless the level you know the campaign is going to end at, I think there's only one way to level this up. And before I begin to do that, I'm just going to to provide a shout out to the dude that actually sent me a private message to my email about this build. I heavily borrowed from his build right here. I did change some stuff. I changed the sequencing and changed the invocation. He opted to use the healing invocation. I opted to use the scouting invocation. But for the most part, this is like these two builds are almost resemble each other a lot. And he basically pointed me out to make a video about it, and I just said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And luckily I remembered to provide a shout out again. Shout out to the dude. Not sure his real name, but yeah, that's about him. That's about it. You can go and give him some karma if you are on Reddit. So yeah. Thank you again. So yeah, I mean, progression, you can pretty much do this right here or do this here, pretty much almost the same. First level fighter for the concentration saving throws, archery, fighting style, and second wind. You have +2 to hit. You have concentration saving throws, which you will be able to use right away at level 2 for Hex spell, and you have some self-healing, which is always good to have. Now at second level, Hex Warrior, Hexblade's Curse, additional damage. You can use your Charisma now, and I mean, don't forget at first level, due to the fact that how your stats are distributed, your you are actually not going to be able to use your hand crossbow. But with 16 strength, you can just pick any kind of melee weapon and just swing it for the first level. And 300 experience points is not too much to get, so you will be able to wield hand crossbow very, very soon. So starting from level 2, when you can use your charisma for your hand crossbow, you will be able to deal additional damage, crit more often. And with Hex spell, almost double the damage output, so yeah, that's about it. You get some spells, obviously, one of those is going to be Hex. Now, a little bit of difference between him and me. I opted, after the first level of Warlock, to go all the way up to 6th level of Fighter. Yeah, I mean, instead of 6th level of Fighter, which provides you with a Sharpshooter feat, basically, you can go to the 2nd level of Warlock and get your Devil's Sight invocation sooner, 1 level sooner than the way I did it. But I personally think that with Fairy Fire, which you have as your basically Drow Magic, your half-elf Drow Magic variant feature, which you can cast once per day, it's enough utility which provides enough advantage to be able to hit stuff fairly often, even without Devil's Sight Darkness combo. Now, you can do whatever you want, but this is just the way I think it's better, and basically you get all of the level 2 to 6 fighter goodies. So action surge, superiority dice, 3 maneuvers, of which precision attack is the most important one, pretty much the only one you will kind of rely on a lot, especially at the beginning, and especially after you get your Sharpshooter feat. Now, Student of War obviously not that useful for damage dealing, but sometimes useful. Crossbow Expert enables us to use our 2 attacks per turn. Without Crossbow Expert feat, you can only fire your crossbow, any type of crossbow, only once per turn, because this ignores loading quality. Extra attack, obviously 2nd attack per round. Once you hit level 5, you will be able to fling your crossbow 3 times per round. Basically, at level 6 of your character, you are firing off 3 bolts per round. And finally, at level 7, you are firing 3 bolts that are dealing 1d6 or 2d6 with Hex spell. 2d6 plus 13-14 damage, which is basically just ridiculous. You can deal like 50, 60, maybe even 70 damage on level 7 just like that. I mean, granted, if all 3 hit. Now, levels 8 and 9 is when you max your Warlock, so you get your Devil's Sight. Now, before you can take Voice of the Chainmaster, which basically relies on you having a Pact of the Chain boon, I would just pick Gaze of Two Minds because it's sort of similar in its mechanics. If you touch a humanoid, you can perceive through his or her senses. For like one level of Warlock, you won't have your Find Familiar. You will just rely on other humanoids that you can encounter on your battles or on your explorations to go ahead and just fire off traps and figure what's inside. Now, obviously, at 3rd level of Warlock, at 9th level of your character, you pick your Pact of the Chain boon, which gives you a Find Familiar spell, which basically gives you these better familiars. Now, I would personally pick either Imp or Sprite. Both are good. Imp is probably a little bit better. To each its own. Some magic resistance if your DM allows you a variant familiar, which is basically a special type of this creature which can be encountered like if you explore the dungeons and whatnot. If the DM allows you to have this, you can have magic resistance, which is like even more ridiculous thing to have. So yeah, that's about it. Finally, you get darkness and suggestion. You already have 1 darkness per day. Just because you are a drow half elf, but now you have 3 because you have 2 2nd level spell slots. After that, you just go all the way up until level 17 fighter and get everything in between. Now let's see what this build can actually do at level 20. Now granted, this build, as I already explained previously, it's not a tier 4 build per se, but it's still very competitive. It's not at the level of some other builds that I talked about on this channel, but it's still somewhere close. Now, due to the fact that at level 20 you get your 2nd action surge, you can basically action surge twice in the same fight, and you can do it just every short rest. So you take a fight, you action surge twice, you take a short rest, and then you can do it again. Now, with short rests, you can do somewhere around 170 to 180 damage in a single round, granted if all attack hits. But what's going to enable you to have a very, very high chance of hitting is your Elven Accuracy, your Lucky Feet, your Precision Maneuver, and the ability to have like a higher crit range, because if you, for example, Hexblade's Curse and the monster has a lot of armor class, you still hit it if you roll a 19. So yeah, additional damage, just like these little types of damage that add up and compound on each other. Again, you can send Familiar to scout ahead, cast Darkness once you know that you are going to be in a fight before the DM shouts roll initiative. After those first two rounds, you are hovering somewhere around 100 damage per round at your max once you fire off all of your cylinders, all of your curses, all of your whatever, darknesses, hexes, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's not the best damage dealer, but it's a very consistent damage dealer. And don't forget, as you level up, you might encounter some magic items. Now granted, this build relies solely, almost specifically around hand crossbow, which is going to limit your selection of magic magic weapons to take. But if you happen to come across a magic hand crossbow, which is going to, I don't know, give you a +1 or maybe +2 to hit and +1 +2 to hit to damage, it's going to increase your chance of hitting, increase your damage output even more. So yeah, I mean, 100 damage at level 20 is not that bad. Like, a lot of single class characters are peaking around that level anyway. So I mean, a full-fledged fighter can do a similar type of damage output to this, maybe even a little bit more. But this build actually guarantees hits in most situations, because you have so much stuff stacked on top of each other: the darkness, the precision maneuver, the elven accuracy, the lucky feet, all of that. So yeah, I mean, it really lends itself well to somebody that hates missing stuff that it's trying to hit. So yeah, with that said, that's about it. You have like a lot of feats, you have a lot of attack rolls per round, you have a lot of hit points, your initiative is not the best, your armor class is okay, it's pretty solid, 18 is nothing to be ashamed of. And yeah, that's about it. Pretty simple build, pretty straightforward build. There's only like a couple of things you can do. Yeah, not a lot of choice, not a lot of thinking, but very effective. And if you want to play a character that just deals damage, has some type of utility, some scouting utility, some limited amount of spellcasting, this is the one to take in my opinion. And yeah, with that said, if you like this video, leave a like, drop a comment, hit that share button, hit the bell button to get notified in the future when I release new videos. And yeah, MinMax Munchkin out, and talk to you soon.